Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back for another EVE Online video. Today's video is going to be a discussion video because I want to talk a little bit about the latest devblog that CCP has released. We have been waiting for a very long time for news from CCP about what they're planning for EVE Online, what their focus is going to be for the next quadrants, and I think it is all starting because we get a very interesting devblog about what CCP is planning for the general ecosystem and economy of the game. As always, if you want to read along, you can follow me through eveonline.com. Then you click on the articles website that brings you over here, and then here we get the devblogs with the latest one, EVE Online, the ecosystem outlook. So if we click on that one, that's where we find this devblog. Now I'm trying something a little bit new with the background, just experimenting a little bit. I'm not sure if anyone reads whenever I make a video about a devblog, but if you do, let's move to the office then. We'll go over here, and that should allow you to read up if you want to. Of course, I'll put a link in the description of the video as well if you want to read the full devblog at your own pace. But it starts with a couple of interesting sentences. Abundance breeds complacency and scarcity breeds war. At least that's what we're hoping for. Predictable inputs lead to stagnant outputs. Autarky is anathema to free trade. So self-reliance, basically, which is what has been a very strong focus for like a couple of years ago, basically, for nullsec. And CCP is doing a 180 on that. They don't want people to be completely self-reliant. You need to be trading. You need to gather all the pieces of the puzzle if you want to do everything that's possible in the game, and that's not just hunkering down in one part of space. So I kind of like that idea myself. I want to see more trade. I want to see like trade convoys come back and things like that. So hopefully that'll work out. So I'm not going to read the entire devblog. It's actually a pretty long one, but CCP is basically explaining to us that how they have been gathering feedback through surveys and of course their own numbers, and they basically gave a rating to certain aspects of the game, and none of them are good actually. For balanced and progression, they're at a C rating. I think AAA is of course the one that we would love to be at, but for balanced and progression, yeah, they have been making some changes. The Titan high angular weapons, I believe they are, so against smaller ships, have been removed. Removal and boson applications, support fighters updates, regular weapon and ship balance updates. I mean, I think that they've been doing a pretty good job on that, changing ships around, trying different stuff as well, with warp speed buff, drops buffs, and things like that. I think that they have tried to keep it fresh, but of course the big elephant in the room is still capital, and especially super capital proliferation, the umbrella in 0-0, a big complaint for a lot of people, and yeah, their effectiveness basically to make ISK and to control whole areas of space, making them basically safer than HiSec is what a lot of people claim, at least. So module tier site and then the faction implants. Yeah, they've been adding a lot of implants here. What's got me a little bit worried, basically, for economy and industry, they give themselves a D, which is definitely not good, although it is improving. Lots of complaining along the way, but ore scarcity phase has started. That's of course really important. Look at the price of titanium shooting up like crazy. One of the, I think the previous devblog explained that they basically removed titanium and almost all basic minerals from moon mining, except for pyrite and mexilon. Those might actually take a little bit of a hit in all of this, but the scarcity phase is definitely here. The changes to faction warfare LP payouts, of course, and then incursion payouts rules. Those are things that they have been changing. I was not even aware that they changed incursions, actually. And then for cheating and abuse, was a D and is a B now, and so they're basically claiming that 80% of cheating has been taken out of the game because of actions that CCP has done. I tend to believe them. I do think that stuff like indeed the Drifter AI change, for instance, can make it very difficult to keep a bot up and running without any supervision. I mean, those Triglavian patrols can come across one of your Orcas and they will actually destroy that one. So I think that adding that spice to the game so that you you perhaps need to run away from them, move to another system if you have a forward operating base and things like that, has made it a lot harder to just keep in a single spot doing the same thing over and over again, which is very easy to automate through a bot, of course. And of course, they're also going after market bots, all of that stuff, lots of bans as well. And I think they also mentioned that the positive feedback that they now give, if you spot a bot, you report it. If they finally come around to banning it, because they've done everything else that they need to do, then you'll actually get a mail from CCP saying, all right, you indeed caught that guy and he's now gone from the game. I think that helped with the motivation of players and giving that feeling that what we are doing is helping CCP and CCP is actually doing something with it. So cheating and abuse, very, very big focus from CCP. I think we're heading in the right direction personally. And I think it is also like super important because, of course, all the effort that any player puts into the game is only valuable as long as stuff like botting gets taken out of the game as much as possible. Let's see here. Actions and directives. A long-term roadmap has been established. We have been waiting for that for a very long time. Now we know that it's there. Just a matter of hopefully not too much time until we learn exactly what that is looking like. Taking into account community and CSM input, and the following changes will be implemented in the coming months. There are some pretty interesting ones in here. A level PvP playing field where there is an intuitive and interesting escalation path from sub-capital to capital to super capital, which features clearer counters and more options, hard counters and weaknesses, and escalation path. So here, personally, I do think that CCP is going to go ahead with like the anti-capital bombers and things like that. Those ideas, I think, have been thrown around in the last eVegas, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, lots of people said, why not make a battle cruiser hull that can do basically the same thing a stealth bomber can do to a battleship, but then to a capital or a super capital ship. Sounds interesting. It might be coming our way. Address the proliferation and survivability of capitals and super capitals with a number of key changes. So they're definitely, I think, considering nerfing their HP, their ability to just stay on the field almost indefinitely, and probably faxes will be in the crosshairs as well. Address damage and damage application issues for super capitals and capitals to help define their roles, and continue to iterate on sub-capital balance. Let's see here. Not exactly sure how to interpret this one, but what makes EVE so interesting is that PvP risk is inherent across almost all activities on top of the PvE risk of each activity. While efforts are made to ensure that the rewards are in line with the risks, it is clear that this balance is not achieved in many areas. We will take stock of all PvE and resource gathering and work to align risk rewards. So high reward, low risk, high impact, low effort. So they're gonna look at all possible activities. I wonder if old and forgotten parts of the game, like for instance the research agents, which for me are still continuously producing some stuff in a super passive way, might be what they mean here. Perhaps incursions, while you know lots of people do use the play incursions. They're really big money makers. Although above here we already saw that they changed stuff like that. Maybe it's like burner missions and things like that. You know, there's definitely some outliers that may be a lot higher in rewards than what they should be. Allow payouts of certain outlier PvE activities. I've said I'm not really sure what they mean by that. Add elements of risk or commitment to certain outlier activities. This again, yeah, not exactly sure what they're alluding to here, but if you are one of those players that, for instance, focuses almost only on burner missions or almost only on incursions or other really rather niche playstyles in EVE, look out, changes may be up and coming. Ecosystem Health Index. Another desire is to add conflict drivers through the distribution availability of resource activities. In doing so, we would distribute the universe population so that there is less empty space and fewer overpopulated, guarded and safe systems. This will lead to increased trade, movement and conflict. So this one is, of course, in my opinion, the big gamble. This is basically, in a nutshell, right now we're going into the shortage phase. After that, they're hoping to bring a dynamic resource system. So the more people you pack into a single system and you mine everything that's available, you run all anomalies that are available, they're gonna dry up just like a wormhole can basically dry up. Man, wormholes have been such an awesome mechanic, to be honest. I lived in one for quite a while. It's really amazing. But once you get like 20 people into like a C1 wormhole, it becomes impossible to enjoy the game. So I think that they want a system like that to come to the entirety of the game, but the hope is specifically that this becomes a conflict driver. And of that, well, we'll need to see. I am personally not 100% sure that that is going to happen. The main reason is the existing structures don't just disappear because you change the resource distribution. Massive alliances and coalitions exist. They hold control over massive parts of nullsec already, and rather than go into conflict over shifting resources, they may just wait it out a little bit, find out the optimal pattern for a certain migration, make deals, and not necessarily go into conflict for every scrap of titanium that becomes available somewhere. For instance, this is, in my opinion, something that is possible because, well, we have been in such a state of abundance and of the ability to support massive numbers of players in very small areas that it is going to be very difficult, I think, to push them or to force them basically towards war. Trade, on the other hand, I do think will massively gain from this, because if they do this right, they'll give every part of space something unique, something that is needed in almost anything else that you do in the game. And so to have more trade, I think, is already a very positive thing to add there. You could choose to become part of a unique role depending on where you fly, and always see that as being a valuable activity in the game, because trade is basically necessary. No part, no place will ever or will be completely independent. I think get away from that, incentivize trade, and the rest could follow. Will we see huge wars because of that? We'll have to be careful. People have become accustomed basically to loss not really meaning too much anymore in EVE Online, which is something CCP wants to change, but that's a completely different mindset that needs to come back, I think. So for the moons, for instance, removal of almost all Tech 1 moon minerals from normal and wormhole moons, add new uses for the Tech 2 moon minerals. We're not sure when that's going to happen. So right now, moon mining is basically almost worthless in the game, but CCP is well aware of that, and they'll probably add new uses to these minerals that you can create there. And then something specific for wormhole and planetary resources. We'll see what that's all about. And this is big. Structures. Asset safety changes. Well, I've been basically predicting that since the nullsec blackout, which is a bit of an experiment that I'm not sure went exactly the way I was hoping for, or CCP was hoping for. But when they did that, I was always of the opinion that asset safety was in the crosshairs as well. And well, it may not be that it's going to get torn out of the game completely, but they are announcing changes to asset safety. I can't wait to get the details on that. It could be very interesting, also very scary, of course, for someone like me who has lots of structures, does everything in structures. Although, luckily for me, I just come out of a war deck and I have basically evacuated 90% of the stuff that I had in there. So if I have to go lean, I can do so very quickly. Diversity index fueling responsive metagame through the introduction of new options and or balancing existing ones across a variety of playstyles and activities, both in PvE and PvP. I think here new ships continue the balancing, the tier side of modules and things like that. I think they're on the right track. I think that Team Talos with CCP Rise has been doing their best to look at the most acute problems and not fix it all in one go, but try to improve it with small and manageable changes and balances. I think if CCP can stay the course there, that we'll get there as well. So for that resource distribution update, basically this doesn't say much except what is CCP's vision on the current state of basically income of creation of stuff that could probably be stuff and ISK in my opinion, in the game, and they're saying there is too much income at the moment. It is too easy to produce minerals, to get ISK, to get everything up and running, basically to create stuff in the universe. As a result, loss has become almost meaningless up to a certain extent, and because you can just indefinitely fly around in Tech 1 ships, for instance, capitals and super capitals all of a sudden become something that you only use when you absolutely need it, or you're 100% sure that you don't use it. And so all of that risk averseness really is taking the upper hand, I think, in the game in general. Even for me, I mean, I'm a Care Bear, that's why I play in high sec. That's why I personally will probably be in the too high income bracket, because I just don't like to risk a lot of stuff. But especially in nullsec, I think that switch needs to be made to, you've gotta risk it in there. Everything is at risk all the time, and loss is a real part of the game, making hopefully tighter knit communities and driving conflict as well, because you can finally have a real impact on your enemy whenever you destroy a Tech 1 fleet, for instance. If making a new one is not as trivial as it is now, you can really try to hurt your enemy, and that might actually also be a part as to why war is so unplentiful. Up to a certain extent, it's rather meaningful right now. If you can bleed an enemy dry by attrition, by just going out there fighting, keeping them from gathering resources, and every ship destroyed actually counts, that, of course, I think is a very strong motivator to keep up with a war in EVE Online. And so right now, that's a little bit out of the game, especially for some of the larger and established groups. So I really like this part here as well. CCP thinks it's a real problem, and they're just straight up saying waiting longer to address this imbalance will mean a worsening of the situation. Therefore, a bold plan is being put into motion so that even more drastic measures are not required in the future. And then I'm really sorry for people that have been mining in a dozen Rorquals in 0-0 at the moment, but if you did not see the writing on the wall for that one, that was not going to last forever. Well, here it is in black and white. It was too much, it was too easy, and it's just something that CCP is going to have to pull off the band-aid, really make those changes, and rather do them now than us being in an even worse state and them having to do something that's even more drastic than this. I fully agree with that. And so the plan right now is to get into that shortage phase. The main goal of the shortage phase is to get the economy to the left side of the healthy state, so to make sure that pretty much no matter what you do, you're finding yourself in a rather low income situation. Not really sure how all of that is going to work out. For EVE Talk, it could be really interesting, of course, if Tech 1 ships across the board just become more expensive, more valuable. How will newer players deal with that? Honestly, back in the good old days, like 10 years ago when I was playing EVE Online, it was a real hassle to work my way into a Hulk, especially then to have like enough funds to buy a second one if I were to lose it, so that I could follow that first rule of don't fly what you can't afford to lose. It was real work, but it was also very rewarding to finally get into that battleship and be able to do those level 4 missions, to finally get into that Hulk and get that like highest yield that was possible back in the day. So of course there will be some pain, especially for people that don't like the risk in gaming. But this is just a massive sandbox, and yeah, keep in mind the tougher something is, the more rewarding it is as well. So I personally am not too afraid of the impact for newer players of making stuff more expensive, harder to get, income harder to get in general. It is just unavoidable that the established players, the players with a lot of knowledge about the game, will have a leg up, an advantage over this. But yeah, if it's needed in general for the economy, I think we gotta do it. Next up, they'll do the redistribution phase. The location of the healthy range limits will be declared. So, okay, so after this, they'll basically declare, we consider that to be a healthy income for nullsec, probably for highsec, for remote space, etc. And then the necessary changes to place the income within that range will be made. As it is not a static state, there are many moving parts and attributes that establish this range and the relative contribution. So very, very difficult exercise in my opinion, almost impossible. to do. You'll never come into agreement with everyone, of course. Should nullsec be twice as profitable, 5 times, 10 times as profitable as highsec? What about lowsec? Should that be in between null and high, or should that actually be the most rewarding place to play EVE Online, because it is also, I think, arguably the highest risk as well? What about wormhole space? Is null harder than nullsec, easier than nullsec? There's going to be lots of opinions and lots of discussions here. I'm from highsec. I just hope we don't get hit too hard, that we still have something to do as well. I don't think CCP is going to do that, especially considering how many people actually play in highsec. It's a very large portion of the player base. And of course, there's still a very strong focus on newer players as well, which in general start their career in highsec as well. And then finally, the one that we've all been waiting for, I think, and been asking for I think as long as I've been playing EVE Online, a dynamic distribution phase. With the findings of the redistribution phase, it will be possible to create a dynamic system that self-regulates and adjusts accordingly based on player inputs and universe outputs. So basically, over-farming a certain area will cause a drought in the local resources, making it basically either necessary for you to really start trading and importing, building up on what you've already gathered, or start going to war, move around, or make deals with other entities and things like that. That dynamism, or dynamism, not sure how to pronounce that, really needs to come back to the game, I think, and they're planning to do that. So hopefully it'll all work out, of course. 4 on anti-cheat, of course, here, account hacking, bots, and then fraud. Very big problems in the game, just, you know, for every one of us. It is always the message: don't RMT, don't buy ISK from anyone outside of CCP. Buy your plagues there. That is really the best way that we can combat this. And if you spot bots, of course, report them to CCP. You'll get a nice thank you mail when they do their whole I don't know, process that they need to go through in order to be 100% sure, let's say 99% sure that it's a bot. And then when they finally pull the trigger on that one, you know, you're pointing the potential bot there will have helped a lot as well. So overall here, not a lot of specifics, but it definitely confirms basically the thinking of CCP. And for me, a couple of things really stand out here. Number one, basically admitting that the state of the economy is not good long term, that this is a real problem, that loss and destruction has basically become almost meaningless in up to certain segments, I'm going to say, and that they want to fix that. And I'm absolutely for that, you know, especially getting that feeling that what you've earned when you then destroy someone in a frigate, a cruiser, or something like that. You know, it represents something. It's something that they had to build up as well, somehow gather. And I think that on both sides, both the ones that are building stuff, that are doing stuff to create in EVE Online, it will increase their level of contentment, of feeling like, all right, I'm actually achieving something in the game. And at the same time, those that then go out for the destruction of everything, that would love to see the whole universe burn, that'll have meaning as well. So in general, I'm really positive about the fact that CCP basically wants to make loss have meaning again in the universe. And then of course, this one is a big one for me personally, asset safety change, something that has been predicted for a long time. I'm really curious to see what that one is going to be. And then of course, eventually that dynamic distribution phase is going to be very interesting as well. We'll see what CCP has planned for all of that. If the Triglavians, the Drifters, if there's lore stuff that is going to be behind that, I would love to see all of this with a very nice story as well to tell. Cool first dev blog, basically explaining the current thinking for CCP and a little bit of where we're going with all of these drastic changes that CCP is doing to the game at the moment. Well, let's see. I actually agree with this dev blog personally. Let me know in the comments if you don't agree. Maybe right here at the tail end, actually something that keeps popping up in my mind as well. Whenever you know, discussions like this, I read them on Reddit, on the forums and things like that. Lots of players saw this coming. The role change was something where they said, this is too much, this is going to become a problem after a certain amount of time, and we are here now. And number two, skill extractors, skill injectors, they are still, in my opinion, really the foundation of why all of this is becoming so pressing all of a sudden. What CCP has done there is, sure, a very nice short-term income that they have created there, but at the cost of longevity in the game. The ability for larger alliances, established players, to switch into the optimal meta, regardless of the situation that the CCP or the change that CCP makes, such as change the calls, then go back into carrier pilots if that becomes the best way to go, etc., is something that is costing a lot of longevity potentially to the game, and so CCP does need to now come out with drastic actions. Yeah, it was kind of predictable, unfortunately, but this is the route that we're taking. I personally am positive to see that CCP is daring to take these bold steps to just come out and say, this is the situation, we have to do something now. If we wait any longer, it's gonna get even worse. So right now, that short-term pain is needed, and we are going to do it. Hopefully, yeah, it can bring back some value, or increase the value of all the time that we spend in EVE Online. That's the way I look at it. It makes you know, your accomplishments that much more rewarding, and whether they're on the production side or on the destruction side. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about CCP's plans for the general sandbox in the game. Basically, we're gonna enter a sandbox where there's not enough sand, and it's gonna be very interesting. That's it for this one. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.